Hey, welcome to the Meet the Candidates night. This year we have 3 candidates running for 2 open seats on the Board of Education. Members of the community will be able to vote on 2 of these individuals along with the school budget by absentee ballot. This year our candidates are DJ Hansen, Douglas Kelly, and Ann Marone. So tonight we will have an introduction period, which each candidate will be limited to 2 minutes. And that will be followed by a series of questions with 2 minutes for each candidate to respond to and a 1-minute closing statement for each. So we'll start with the introduction and we'll start with DJ.
Good evening. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Just want to give a quick overview, biography of me. I've been a member of the Averill Park community for 15 years. My wife, Lynn, we have 3 children, Colin, who's a junior, Alex, a freshman, and Lizzie, who is in 7th grade. I am the oldest of 5 children. My father was an elementary school teacher, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. As you can imagine, doing more with less and compromise were values that were instilled in me in a very young and early age. I've been very active in the community. I've been a coach at Twin Town Little League for 7 years. I was a coach at APU soccer for 10 years, and also a coach for AP Youth Basketball, going on 9 years. I was on the board of directors at AP Youth Basketball for 7 years, the last 5 as president. I also was a member of the 2018-19 Long Range Planning Committee, where Don Adams and I were lucky enough to present the Long Range Planning Committee's recommendation for the Board of Ed and the administration. A little background education-wise, I've got my bachelor's from Sacred Heart University down in Connecticut. I did my master's at Virginia Tech, and I did some doctorate work at the University of Albany. For the past 22 years, I've been in the technology industry. I've focused heavily on K-12 education, higher education, and state government. Really think that this professional experience has afforded me the opportunity to work with many school districts across the state and allow me to understand and assist with solving their various technology challenges. With regard to the board, and really there's 3 themes of from my perspective, what I support, and in no particular order. I think number 1 is the role of our community needs to continue to be a focus of the district as we continue to provide students opportunities to learn outside the 4 walls and to become global citizens. Obviously, this is especially important considering the current global pandemic that we find ourselves in. I think also we need to provide that I can provide a different perspective to the current Board of Ed based on my relationships and professional experience, solving real school problems and challenges using technology across the many districts, BOCES, RICs, and state entities across New York State. Finally, I want to continue to help to push and the forward momentum the district has achieved with the current administration, and to make sure that although we remember the past, we use it to help us inform the future. And I think that using those 3 themes to really engage at a deeper and higher level with the community, and to make sure that everyone is heard and we make very informed decisions upon that. So thanks.
Thank you, DJ. Next up will be Doug.
Good evening. I'm Doug Kelly. I live on Shear Road in Averill Park. I'm asking for your support for a seat on the Averill Park Board of Education. All school districts will face challenges and uncertainty in the near future, and will have to make very difficult financial decisions due to the pandemic situation that we're in right now. I'm asking for your support for a seat on the board based on my experience in education, local government, and business, so I can help make those difficult decisions from a multi-perspective view. My experiences have taught me problem-solving strategies and best practices that will serve the district and taxpayers well in the future. I have a master's degree in educational administration, plus 30 postgraduate hours, and over 30 years of experience in education. I intend to make contributions as a member of the Board of Education that will maintain the quality education Averill Park is noted for, and to provide extracurricular activities our students enjoy without impacting our taxpayers. I was a social studies teacher at Averill Park High School for 15 years. Also a soccer coach, social studies department chairperson, and president of the Able Park Teachers Association. I also served the community as a part-time Town of Sand Lake supervisor for 8 of those 15 years. As town supervisor, I brought the New York State Police to Sand Lake. I oversaw the construction of the sewer district and purchased and renovated the present town hall facility. The supervisor is the chief financial officer for the town, and I managed all of the funds. In the world of business, after leaving teaching briefly, I joined an internet startup company. The company built websites for newspapers. In my capacity, again, as a teacher, I visited newspaper staffs throughout the United States and taught them how to use the website and how to explain its value to their advertisers. I never really left teaching, only this time I was teaching adults. After experience in business, I returned to my passion, which is K-12 education, and went on to serve in the role as middle school principal and superintendent in Middleburg School District, and retired as superintendent at Hoosick Valley. I retired in 2013 and then continued in education. Upon retirement, I joined CASDA, which is the Capital Area School Development Association, an arm of the State University at Albany, where we provide professional development services for both administrators and teachers in school districts and other staff members as well. As a member of the faculty at CASDA, I had a very unique position. My position was to visit superintendents throughout the state to discuss their challenges and best practices, and to ask what professional development needs they might ask for from CASDA. I reported directly back to the executive director at CASDA. I worked with districts with only 120 students, K through 12, struggling to survive, and in much larger districts. I learned of their challenges and best practices and returned to CASDA with their district needs. During retirement, I've also served in interim capacities as an assistant principal, and superintendent in different districts. I obtained certification as a lead teacher evaluator, and I am now working for Questar, mostly in the Ichabod Crane School District, evaluating teachers on an annual basis. I would appreciate your support for a seat on the Able Park School Board. And I want to congratulate the teachers, all the teachers and their support staffs for their perseverance and creativity during these difficult times. My values include continuing a high level of academic excellence as we face budget issues and declining enrollment. I support technology programs and trade programs. I support strenuously the mental health issues and services that are badly needed in all of our schools, and encourage best practices that I've observed in different school districts. So that's what I have to offer the district, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Doug. And we'll wrap up the intros with Ann.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. My name is Ann Maroney. I've been in the district for 28 years with my husband, Dan. We have 3 children. My oldest son graduated in 2016. My older daughter graduated last year in 2019, and I have a sophomore in the high school. Most of what you need to know about me is on my bio, but just as an overview, I've volunteered for many aspects in our community. While they were in elementary school, I volunteered with the PTA in several positions on the PTA in Miller Hill. I've been a cookie mom for Girl Scouts. I've been working as the treasurer for the Averill Park Youth Soccer League for many, many years. And I also served as a treasurer for our Burden Lake Association. And most recently, I'm just completing my first term on the school board. I attended Siena College. I have a bachelor's degree in finance. And I'm currently using that degree at Siena. I've been there for 25 years in the budget and finance area. So that gives me the background in the budget information. Now, personally, I grew up in a very poor situation where we were recipients of welfare. We were recipients of free lunch and food stamps and rent assistance. So I've seen that side of things, and I was the first in my family to go to college. And so I understand the value that education is to get ahead in life. And with that said, I think that gives me a strong foundation in knowing the struggles of the taxpayers on one side, but also knowing the value of the education that these kids need. Being that I've worked in the finance for 25 years, I also understand how you have to do more with less. And that's no more obvious than what's about to happen in the next few years coming. So I've enjoyed working with the board and the administration over these last few years. I've learned so much, and I feel like I've been a positive contribution and asked the right questions and been an advocate for both the students as well as the taxpayers. So I hope you will consider voting for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ann. So that wraps up our introductions. Now we're going to go into the questions. The order of this is going to be switched around so everybody gets a chance to go first. I'm going to attempt to share my screen so everybody can see the questions, so you can read them while you're answering. Okay, did everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so this is the first question. It is due to the pandemic, the role of the school district has changed in recent months. How do you view the role of the school district in the coming year? And Doug, we're gonna start with you for this one.
Yeah, I think there'll be some profound changes in the educational system in the coming years as a result of the pandemic. The teachers have done a fantastic job working with students over the internet. Unfortunately, many students of ours don't have internet access or high-speed internet access, so they're at a disadvantage. We have to overcome that as an issue. The school district some school districts I'm aware of are contemplating smaller classes with social distancing among the students in those classes, and even social distancing in gathering areas such as the cafeterias. So the role of the district is going to change somewhat, and with the economic downturn, I lived through the 2008 financial crisis as a superintendent, and I saw the state decrease our school allotment, our school aid, over a 3-year period, despite the promises they had made. And that really hurt our school district and other school districts as well. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen financially, because I think we're going to be in some tougher straits than we perhaps realize right now. But the teachers have been doing a fantastic job, and I wanted to make sure that I commended them. As our roles changed, they've adopted and have been very creative in working with students.
All right, thanks, Doug. And next up will be Ann.
Thank you. Yes, definitely the role of the school district in the coming year will change, most likely considerably. I've had a lot of time to think about this actually, and what the school district will look like come September. And unfortunately, there's more unknowns than knowns. But what I found is that our faculty and our administration have especially stepped up in finding so many creative ways to reach out and get to the students. And so I think that whether it's smaller class sizes with some kids being online or alternating, or changing maybe times of the school day, I feel like our administration and our faculty it does think outside of the box, and they will be looking into moving either hours or numbers. And I also see the school district as having the role of what they've already been doing is continuing to meet the food needs of our community, and as well as the mental health needs of our community. We do have that set up in our district now. I think it's important because if your basic needs aren't met, then there's no way these children can learn if their basic needs aren't met. So I see the district as coming together, as holding the community together as it has been in terms of providing meals and support for our entire community, not just the students. I also, I mean, you even see like how the coaches and our sheriff there, he helps us out and in different ways, and everybody stepped into whatever needed to be done. And I see that happening as we move forward. Thank you.
All right, and DJ.
Thanks, Brian. So, yeah, the school district and both Ann and Doug mentioned this. The one thing we can be certain of is that there will be change. There'll be significant change. What comes down from state ed, what comes down from other folks within, that impact the district, is definitely going to severely handicap based on budgets, and even in terms of the role of what normalcy is, right? So I think the district today, I know for my family especially, and our kids, it is the normal, right? It is the one thing. It's seeing the kids, seeing their friends, seeing their teachers, and I think, and again, Ann made this point, I think now it begins to have to really, I'll say, supercharge outside of the four walls, right? So everything that goes on inside when those kids get to school every day, all of the things that happen, whether it's food, mental health, the teaching for special needs, that's got to somehow expand out of the four walls. And how do we look at that and get that into the district, right? So I think as specifically for Able Park and how geography dispersed we are, it's got to continue to be that, I'll say, heartbeat of the community. It's got to continue to be the center of the community. It needs to be, from a district standpoint, where we are able to turn to allow our kids to continue to receive all of the services they get, not just the education piece, but the basic needs, as Ann had mentioned. So I see us, challenged really with how do we get outside of it. And Doug mentioned it, that the teachers and the administration have done an unbelievable job, really via brute force of being forced into delivering education and other services over a medium that was used as a helper, right? Google Classroom is great, but it's a helper technology. It's not meant to be delivering all of what it's doing. And the ability for us to think outside the box and to deliver the other services around food services, mental health, any other special services and special needs services, that's gotta be first and foremost, with regard to, as we're looking at it, moving forward. And finally, we talked about, the coaches and the workouts. We were talking before, the three of us were talking about workouts and things that are happening. There's a lot of outreach that happens outside the normal channel, right? School's not just from 7 in the morning to 3 o'clock now. It's literally starts at 7 and it's running till 10, 11 o'clock at night. My daughter had a meeting, a Google Meet the other night. It was like at 10 o'clock where a teacher got on and was helping her with some math stuff. So it's this outside the box piece where school isn't just, hey, I show up and I leave. It's now going to be ingrained every single day and everything that, our kids do and even that we do as we move forward. So thanks.
All right, now we'll move on to question 2. We are currently facing an economic crisis in our region, state, and country. how should the district prioritize what it offers to its students? And this time we are going to start with Anne.
Okay, thank you. My thought is that the district, first and foremost, has to focus on the educational side. Unfortunately, when there's cuts, we don't want to see them to the programs. We don't want to see them to the extracurriculars. But in my mind, the education that the kids receive is of utmost importance, and that should be prioritized. I like that the district has been using attrition instead of making those cuts. They've been using attrition to balance the budget. And so I already see that they know and offer what is the most important programs and still don't want to cut them. So in addition to the educational priorities, obviously, as I mentioned before, we need to make sure the basic needs of students are met so that, we don't have the absenteeism problem. We have to get the kids, engaged and get them in school. And once they are, we need to make sure they're supported via mental health, if there's special needs, and they're fed. So once again, the baseline needs to be covered first. And then we go on from there onto the extracurriculars and the clubs and the programs that we all love, and keeps our children engaged in the district and encourages them to want to be there and be part of that community. Thank you.
All right, and moving on, we'll get to DJ.
Thanks, Brian. So the basics are essential. So I think as we prioritize and we look at what is important in the priorities of the district from an education standpoint, I think the basic services that we offer, 100%, that's where we need to start. So I think you start there. I think and then we go from a programmatic standpoint up in terms of how we continue to offer the services that the district needs. It's and our students need from the district. So again, the administration and credit to Jim and everyone on the executive staff, right? We've continued to look forward financially, right? If you've read the budget piece, we were $340,000 in cuts. He was able to, with the administration, get down to an extra 500,000. So we've got to continue, and that's the look forward piece. We've got to continue to look forward and start to anticipate what's happening and get there and make sure that we're controlling what we can control with that. So as you start to make your list of priorities and prioritize what is most important, again, starting at the basic piece and moving up from there. So from an educational standpoint, we have a phenomenal administration. I think they've done a great job, not only from a financial standpoint, but also from a programmatic standpoint of setting the strategy. And I think as the Board of Ed member, that it's our jobs to go out and help with that and help provide some oversight to it, and making sure that we are being responsible back to our fellow taxpayers, as well as making sure that the kids have what they need.
All right, thank you. And Doug, you can wrap up question 2.
Okay. How should the district prioritize what it offers to its students? I think the district cannot do that in isolation without input from students and parents. I think it's essential that we take a look at all of the classes, see what electives are being subscribed to. Same thing with after school activities, and make some hard decisions and cutoff points to determine what is going to be continued. I think an important resource for students and the district in this entire matter is distance learning. We can offer courses that we may not be able to teach here in terms of financial resources or teacher resources through distance learning, and give students those opportunities to continue with courses that we may not have enough students for to teach in-house. So the district can't prioritize, I don't believe, without input from the community. without asking the students themselves what are the courses they intend to enroll for next year, and also parents. And I think the district has done that on occasion, and I'd like to see more of that. I served on a committee, for example, with DJ to look at the building project and to look at the repairs that are needed in the building project, and we help prioritize those needs. I think we can do that again with community committees, including students. So that's where I think we should head, knowing that there's a financial crisis coming. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doug. And we'll move on to question 3. What are your thoughts on online or remote learning? And this time we're going to start with DJ.
Thanks, Brian. So because of my experience with distance education, with online learning, with technology in general, I have many thoughts, which I could go on all night about, right? So I think what's interesting about it is it's always been supplemental, right? We've, in this country, online and remote learning has always been something that's added to. Doug just talked about distance education, distance learning. There's a lot of students who, for instance, Mandarin Chinese is a very popular distance education class that someone could take. We don't necessarily offer it at Able Park, but you could take it. But it's one class, and you go into a room, you sit down with the equipment, and you start to, for however long the class is, you sit there, you consume, you interact, you have a remote class, kind of like what we're doing right now on Zoom, right? And then you move on, and then you go out, you have lunch with your friends, you do all sorts of things. So it's always been that piece. As a technology in general, we have not yet developed, and I certainly haven't seen a platform that is what I'll call 24/7 ready for full online or remote learning, right? Google's great. Google Hangouts is great. Google Meeting is great. Google Classroom is great. It's supplemental, right? So I believe that it needs to continue that, and that we need to start to look at other, as the technology progresses, platforms that will help supplement whatever comes down based on the pandemic. The reality of the situation right now is we know things are going to change. The three of us just sat here, and it's hard to look into the crystal ball and try and determine where things are going to be based on a variety of different fear factors that are going to weigh in. But what we need to make sure that is happening with online learning and remote learning, that there is some sort of social interaction that is part of the learning process. It can't just be I log on to my Chromebook at 3 o'clock, have my chemistry class, and I'm gone. Or I log on at 8, I have a class, then I'm gone, and then I'm back on. And there's got to be something more there. So I still believe that there's a huge, huge play for online learning. I think the technology is getting there. The platforms are not yet great for delivering it in general. So it's got to all be, again, supplemental. From a business perspective, we work every single day, and I'm sure Ann and certainly Doug, in terms of what he's been doing lately as well, is we're on the computers all day. We're consuming information, whether it's the internet or other applications that are down there, but it's supplemental to what we're doing, right? So, and I still think that online learning and remote learning needs to be supplemental. There are some kids that just can't do it. So we've got to figure out ways to engage with those kids, to be able to engage, whether it's economic, whether it's mental health, other disabilities that kids have, that you just can't sit down and do it that way. So we've got to make sure we put a really good plan and get out in front of this around how are we going to deal with everything. The online piece is there, right? And you can put whatever you want out there. It's the other parts of the online learning part that we really need to make sure we get out in front of. So thanks.
All right. Thank you, DJ. And Doug, you're next.
I spoke a little bit about distance learning, online learning, remote learning, whatever you want to call it. It'll never take the place of a teacher face-to-face with a student. It will, again, supplement what the teacher is doing, and there's different ways to interact online. we need to see it from that perspective, that it's a mixture. It's a supplement to what the teacher does. And the teacher needs to have face-to-face contact with individual students at times. So online learning, as DJ just said, needs to come a little bit farther in terms of its technology. The other thought that I have about distance learning or online learning is that we must not forget that it's a revenue source for school districts, and it's a job saver for teachers. And that is, if teachers offer a course through distance learning, as some of our teachers already have, we get revenues from the subscribers in other school districts to that course. So I see that as both a savior for teachers and as something as a revenue source for school districts, and I will encourage more teachers to do it. I've seen it work very successfully in school districts where one teacher I can think of right now was 5 classes a day online with teachers, with students in other school districts. So I'm an advocate. It does need to come a little farther in terms of the technology and how we use it as an interactive mechanism to work with students. But nevertheless, it's a good alternative and it's a good supplement right now. And I would be a proponent for new ideas and new courses being offered online by our teachers and subscribed to by our students from other school districts. And this kind of goes back to the previous question, is how do we prioritize? The more students we have subscribing to popular courses, I know is a revenue source. It is something that keeps students interested, and it's their choice. And that's how we can prioritize, especially in distance learning classes, whether they're successful or not, whether students sign up for them, whether it's offered by Carroll Durham School District or Averill Park School District. That's how we can determine what level of interest there is. I saw, for example, very popular courses being offered in World War II in the NARA catalogs and in different catalogs that students subscribe to. Very popular. And we don't spend a lot of time on it in US history, maybe as much as we should, but nevertheless, students are interested in it. And this is a good avenue for students to develop their interest and to explore their interest in those sort of classes. So I promote it, I'm encouraging it. And again, I think it's an opportunity for our teachers to take advantage of the situation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doug. And Anne, you can wrap this one up.
Okay, thank you, Brian. My thoughts on online and remote learning are, right now, I'm very glad to have it. Feeling very lucky that we were able to get it going so quickly and efficiently. Well, it looked efficient, at least. One thing I noticed, or I believe, is that online learning, it accentuates the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. I feel it gives the haves even more of a leg up, whether it be access to Wi-Fi or the right laptop or whatever. Fortunately, the district has made great strides in our one-to-one initiative. But if the children are not strong on the computer, then they're going to get behind. So I like to see it, once we get back someday, I like to see it as definitely a support. I think that it's, the Castle Learning programs and, just to drive the education home, it helps. But I think that kids are online too much anyway, and to have their education online in addition to all their other online, I just think that maybe I'm old fashioned, but I think that it's important that, I think it's more important to have that physical classroom where you can have creative discourse and the students are more fully engaged in what's happening around them. Whereas, the TV might be on or they're looking down at their phone. if a teacher is there, they can see that the kid isn't engaged in the class, and they can read their body language and, you know, help them along. And I feel like that's more of an educational tool than others. But it might be a nice thing, you may be on a snow day, you know, so you don't get behind, especially in, you know, the extended chemistry and where you can't really, in similar courses where you miss one day, you miss a lot. So I do see it as a great support, but I also feel like it can accentuate the disparities.
All right, thank you, Ann. Now we'll get to question 4, which is the district's mission is to meet the needs of and create opportunities for every student every day. What does that mean to you as a member of the Board of Education? And Doug, we're gonna start with you for this one.
Oh, okay. I had the wrong picture up there for a minute. I don't know what happened. The district's opportunities for students. Yes, we need to definitely provide as many opportunities as possible. I talked a little bit about distance learning as an avenue for other opportunities. We have in the district after school clubs and teams, and I know we have more than 50 opportunities for students after school to participate in different sports activities, and more than that if we include the clubs. I'd like to see those continued. That's going to be a tough decision to make as we look at participation and decreasing in revenue, and also decreasing in student populations. You know, the district has lost about 13% in the last 10 years of its student population. And this is not unusual for districts. Some school districts in the Adirondacks, for example, have lost 20%. So we need to be very careful and to ask the students about what we're choosing as opportunities for them to make sure that they will partake in those opportunities. So as a member of the board, I want to be very supportive of opportunities, new opportunities for students, and to make sure that the ones we create are the ones that students are going to participate in. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you, Doug. And next up is Ann.
Hey, thank you. To me, every student, every day is a mission that Dr. Franchini and the administration and the faculty have really honed in on, and you see examples of it all the time. One specific example, like Doug mentioned, is clubs and electives. I feel like they help the students to find their passions. And if a student is passionate, it will lead to satisfaction at school, which will lead to success at school. So for every student every day, it's not saying, okay, these higher learners, we're just going to focus on them because, you know, their high test scores make us look good. Or we're not just going to focus on those who struggle and just let the average student just figure it out. I feel like between using the philosophy that every student counts, every student matters, and taking that to build your response to intervention, your mental health, your clubs and activities, it's a basis to jumpstart everything that our district does. And I really feel like they care about every single student, and it shows in their everyday works. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Ann. And DJ.
I think it's a great testament to, and Ann just mentioned it, to the administration, to the faculty and staff, to come up with really a mission statement, really, to that focuses so much and is embodied in every single thing. There's a lot of mission statements out there, and that get put up, and we really do as a district, as a community, focus on this. And I think one of the things, what we have realized through this is once something like this gets put in place, you start to realize the differences in how kids learn, right? And they don't all learn the same. So whether it's an English, whether you excel in English or you excel at basketball, right? There's a lot to be learned in both areas in terms of teamwork, from a basketball standpoint, in terms of a cultural experience that you get, especially playing in the suburban council and the different districts that the kids travel to, versus all the clubs and extracurricular activities that we have. So I think part of it is, and we start to go back to what we're going to definitely have our budget constraints, and we've got to take this and we've got to put it at first and foremost at the center of everything we decide to prioritize, right? This is what we need to do. So we need to first make sure we're identifying what those needs are, and then matching those opportunities. And I think it needs to be done collaboratively. And I think from a standpoint of getting the community bought in to this as well. And we've done a really good job of that across everything. And it transfers not only from the classroom and the four walls into other even the extracurricular community things that the three of us are involved in, whether it's soccer or other clubs across, where Averill Park is so ingrained in what these kids do outside of the school. So I think for me, it means to continue to push it, to continue to make sure we keep this front and center as we make decisions. From a mission statement standpoint, when I was president of Averill Park Youth Basketball, I did it for 5 years, and it's very hard when you're in a position like that to make sure that you're not prioritizing winning or prioritizing the better kids, and to understand, and we used to talk about so much, this is community-based basketball, right? We've got to meet the needs. We have 350 kids playing basketball from K all the way up to 12, right? Playing basketball, it's a long season. So this, you've got to keep your priorities straight, but you need to be able to align with a mission statement, really, that's able to do that. And for me, it's using this as a catapult for all the decisions that we make and are going to have to make in these times, whether it's distance education, whether it's keeping clubs, any other extracurricular activities that are out there, and even courses, right? And then figuring out, if we can't offer them, how do we create that opportunity someplace else? How do we get collaborative with other districts? How do we use BOCES better? How do we use the RICS better, right? How do we use the state better, right? Those sort of things, as we start to become more of a collaborative district outside, to make sure that even though financially we may be strapped, that the opportunities do not go away because of that. They're just different opportunities. So, thanks.
All right. Thank you. And we'll move on to our final question, which is, the district is currently preparing to put a capital project referendum out to the community. What factors should be considered by the district as it moves forward in this process? And for this one, we will be starting with Anne.
Thank you. Well, I believe that both Doug and DJ were on the committee for this very large project that we're undergoing, or that we need to undergo. The condition of our buildings is in sore need of work. Mostly our infrastructure, our roofs, our boilers, our heating systems. There's a lot that needs to be done. However, we understand that given the current financial situation because of the pandemic, many of our members of our community are faced with unemployment and just not knowing the future and what they can support. So we have put the project on hold for now. knowing that there's just so much uncertainty, that factor needed to be considered. First and foremost is how can we put this out to the community and have it supported? Of course, there is the factor that these are dire needed changes that have to happen. So you need to balance. We considered several options in varying millions of dollars. What we really came down to were what were our ones and twos, our top priorities, and an entire community represented by administrators, faculty, board members, the community, business owners. So we got this input from many different stakeholders to make sure that we're moving forward in the right direction for what the district's needs are and what the community's needs are, knowing that our district is the center of our community. So the factors that need to be considered, of course, are the financial factors. How does this affect our taxes? And also the factors of safety and security and a building that is safe for our students and our faculty and staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ann. And DJ, you're up.
So Doug and I sat on that committee, at the committee, long range planning committee, and we went through, and you know, that started in 2018, and there were a series of tours. There were a lot of meetings that took place, and the input from the community, the administration, the board was phenomenal. It was a great experience. I learned a lot about the process. I think as a committee, I think what I can say is that as you start to rank priorities in a committee like that based on where you currently are or where you think things are going. And I think if I look back at what are driving, you know, really the conversations that were happening at that point, I believe that with if you had foresight to say, look, there's a pandemic coming, right? And you could see that we were going to be in financial straits, you would take a step back and say, okay, as we start to really rank things, what are important? And I think I'll go back to what we did. And the first and foremost is our kids need to go to school, right? They've got to have a roof over their head. They can't have leaky roofs. They've got to have boilers that work. The kitchen has to function. The basics of opening that building up, that the state will actually allow us to have school there, number one, right? That's first and foremost. Those were really the ones in there. Secondarily is safety. How do we ensure that our children in today's day and age are safe and secure when they get on that bus or they show up to school, right? As we entrust our administration, you know, the role of the school, and we've talked about it for the past hour and a half, has changed significantly since all of us have been there. And the role of the community, you know, we've got to make sure that, you know, as high a priority as a roof is safety, right? So those are the important things. And then finally is the financial impact, right? There are a lot of people who unfortunately are out of work right now, and we need to consider those folks in terms of what's going on. But I think we also need to make sure, though, that our kids, and we need to balance that we can send them to school. So I think as you look back at, in terms of the primary factors, it's really the ones, right? We rank things 1 through 4 on the list when we made the recommendation. It's really going back and looking at the ones, and then taking a really hard look at those ones and making sure that they're really ones, right? Especially now, and changing the lens and the ability to say, look, you know what, back at the end of 2019 when we made our recommendation, yeah, this has changed. And we need to make sure that as we put this referendum back out, it didn't really go out the first time, it got delayed, but when it does go out to the community, that we are prioritizing those things that allow us to get back to school and certainly are not impacting as few people as possible with regard from a financial standpoint.
Thank you, DJ. And Doug, you get to wrap up this question.
Okay. I managed a building project, a $24 million building project at Hoosick Valley when I was superintendent there. And one of the things that disappointed me coming in there and managing the project were some of the surprises that we had as the project progressed. I hope that the engineers and everyone involved in the project is going to be very detailed. Will be detailed if the referendum passes and we move forward in the process, that we know what we're going to encounter. When we took the tour of buildings as part of our community committee that DJ and I served on, I was shocked at some of the problems that we had with some of the buildings. Roofs were leaking, eaves were totally rotted in some spots. There was possibly some frame damage in one of the buildings, and boilers were leaking. So there are some serious repairs that need to take place. And I think, to reiterate and what both Ann and DJ has said, the priorities, number ones, should be looked at very carefully, and they should be looked at carefully both from a financial point of view and from a physical or construction point of view to make sure that they're absolutely needed. The affordability issue for our residents, I think, is a very important one. I don't remember what the numbers were because we didn't get into the numbers so much as we served on that committee, but it's a considerable project right now that we're looking at, and I want to make sure that it addresses the essentials and doesn't give us too much in terms of fluff. But nevertheless, we have to provide buildings that are safe and secure for our students. I think all of the buildings are going to be equipped with entrances that would keep out intruders or minimize any intrusion through the entire building. So I support the building project. I worked on it. I know what's in it. I know the repairs that have to be made, and I hope it passes, and I hope the board makes sure that they ride herd very carefully on the construction part of it to make sure that there's no surprises and that we know everything going into it before we start awarding contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And that wraps up the question and answer portion of this. We're gonna get back here. So now we're just gonna go around and everybody gets a closing statement. We're gonna try to keep these to around 1 minute in length. DJ, you will go first.
Brian, thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for hosting this tonight. And Doug, thanks for joining as well. I think, we talked about a lot of what we don't know, right? But tonight, in terms of finances, what's school going to look like, technology, we've got a large referendum coming up. I think one of the things we need to make sure is we continue to move the district forward and we control what we can control. We know everything's going to change, that's for sure, right? Over the next weeks, the months, and years. Our Board of Education needs to be open-minded. It needs to understand our past lessons learned. It needs to understand the role of community, and it needs to be able to make decisive decisions that are based on data and understand the role of compromise and teamwork. I believe that I possess those skills. I think I have the experience to allow our district to continue to meeting the needs and creating opportunities for every student every day. And I hope I can count on you for your support of my candidacy for the Board of Education, Averill Park School District.
Thank you, DJ. And Doug?
I wanted to say one thing. I think there are 3 very good candidates here. I wish there were 3 seats open on the board. I'd like to congratulate both Ann and DJ for a good presentation tonight, and best wishes. I have a passion for education, a passion that have lasted more than 30 years as an administrator and as a teacher, and has lasted during my retirement. I research the latest best practices For example, going back to online learning, I learned a little bit recently about flipped classrooms, in which it's a mixture of online learning where the lecture is actually sent home so the video can be viewed by the students at their own pace and replayed if they didn't get part of it. And the demonstrations and the homework is done with the teacher in the classroom. So it's a whole flipped arrangement. And there's so many creative things going on right now that I think it's an exciting time for education as we're changing and being forced to change. And that creates opportunities for everyone to come up with new ideas. So I have a passion for education. I'm a proven leader, both in the community and in school districts. And I would, again, appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And Ann.
I have to agree with Doug. I appreciate the opportunity for this time to show our opinions and talk a little bit more about what our hopes are for the district. I feel like the district is in good shape no matter who gets voted for. So that's encouraging for me. I have worked in the field of education as a member of Sienna for 25 years. I fully understand the concept of trying to do more with less. This is from my home, my work, serving on the boards of education in the soccer league and on the school board. Balance has always been what I strive for. So in my own personal experience of financial hardships and appreciating on the other side of what an outstanding education can mean, that's how I believe that the district's mission of every student every day works for me and what I want to encourage for the district going forward. Now, facing this unprecedented cuts to our aid because of the pandemic, I am acutely aware of how important these experiences are going forward. So my goal is to apply the fiscal knowledge that I have in the volunteer experiences to support the work of our district in providing our children with the high quality education they deserve. While we always need to be mindful of the equally important task of being good stewards of the finances for our taxpayers. So I've seen firsthand the strong foundations that Averill Park has given my children in their success toward their undergraduate degrees. And I wish to continue supporting that as these big changes are coming up. So I appreciate the opportunity to discuss all this tonight, and I would appreciate a vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And thank you to DJ, Doug, and Ann for attending this year's Meet the Candidates Night. This will be posted on the district website, and we'd like to remind everyone that your absentee ballots must be received by the district by 5:00 p.m. on June 9th. That's not postmarked, that's actually received. And candidate bios can also be found online as well. Thank you, Brian, for coming.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so
job.
much.
Brian, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Brian.